Medicine of the future, from diagnosis to filling a prescription, all from the comfort of home. Weekend Business Report starts right now. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Kenil Gale. Thanks so much for spending some of your weekend with us. Technology continues to revolutionize all aspects of our lives. We'll introduce you in a few minutes to a new and exciting way you can see a registered physician without leaving the comfort of your home. But before we get into all that, here are some of the top stories from the BATV News Desk. Dr. Andrew Wheatley has resigned from cabinet. Dr. Wheatley was stripped of the larger portfolio of energy earlier this month after weeks of controversy surrounding the state-owned oil refinery Petrojam. The Office of the Prime Minister, OPM, had announced at the time that Dr. Wheatley agreed with the Prime Minister to transfer the energy portfolio to the OPM. However, he retained the Ministries of Science and Technology. There were calls for him to be booted from cabinet entirely. Last week, the opposition People's National Party said they would walk out of Parliament whenever Dr. Wheatley spoke in his capacity as minister. Since his removal as Energy Minister, Dr. Wheatley had continued to be dogged by issues surrounding the stewardship of the ministry. Meanwhile, the opposition People's National Party, PNP, says it welcomes the long overdue removal of Dr. Andrew Wheatley from the cabinet. However, they say his resignation cannot and will not end the matter. The PNP says the criminal investigations by the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency, MOCA, the Financial Investigative Division, FID, the Auditor General, the Counter-Terrorism and Organized Crime Investigation Branch, CTOC, and the Integrity Commission into the activities at Petrojam and the National Energy Solutions Limited, NESOL, must be pursued to their final conclusions. And they say, let the chips fall where they may. The opposition says Prime Minister Andrew Holness has a duty to ensure that these agencies receive the resources to complete their investigations and provide their reports in a timely manner. Additionally, they're calling for an independent inquiry into hiring practices in light of what they say are deliberate actions to circumvent established procedures. And Prime Minister Andrew Holness met with stakeholder groups on Tuesday, assuring them that there is no cover-up in the Petrojam saga and those who should be will be held accountable. The Prime Minister met with representatives from the umbrella group of churches, the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, the National Integrity Action, and the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. More in this report.
President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, JMEA, Mitri Siaga, says while Dr. Wheatley's resignation is important and is a small step in the right direction, the JMEA is more concerned about the government's plan going forward.
His resignation is one part of it, and maybe for all intents and purposes it's an important part. But the part that is important to me is what are the systems that we're going to put in place now to ensure that there is accountability going forward. And that's what's important to the JME.
Meanwhile, Executive Director of the National Integrity Action, NIA, Dr. Trevor Monroe, has described Dr. Wheatley's resignation as better late than never. But like Mitri Siaga, he too says he's more concerned about what will happen next.
Since the issues and challenges of Petrojam and other agencies require institutional changes as well as implementation of the relevant codes, government governance framework for public bodies, laws, the Public Management Accountability Act, for example, these need to be enforced so that in future, with a new minister, we don't get the same issues arising as has happened in the past.
In the meantime, Dr. Monroe is applauding the public for its continued resilience to hold the government accountable.
Therefore, the main lesson here is that when we see wrongs, whether in our community, most of all at the level of the government, we should not keep silent. We should exercise our rights as citizens in a democracy, and if we exercise our rights with sufficient power and consistency and persuasiveness, the government, if it is wise, is forced to respond in a positive way.
Meanwhile, some stakeholders who attended the meeting with Prime Minister Holness say while Dr. Andrew Wheatley's resignation was long overdue, they're still not satisfied. They want the government to go further, enforcing and revising several of its managerial and ministerial policies which govern public bodies. Here's more.
A day after Science and Technology Minister Dr. Andrew Wheatley resigned, Prime Minister Holness met with stakeholders who had raised concerns weeks earlier about the situation at Petrojam. He said while the public clamored for the government to act swiftly, the administration had to do its due diligence.
The public has to understand, as part of the evolution of this new paradigm of dealing with issues of corruption, that there is a process and that they can be assured that the process itself is rigorous and intuitive. And so I think we have, in this instance, the public can say that there has been this process of investigation, discovery, and as we have been satisfied, we have gone to Parliament, we have reported, and we have acted. That there is no cover-up, there is no running away from, that people who are responsible are held to account.
He argued that no one can deny the fact that the government has been accountable during the Petrojam saga.
There can be no question about the government acting with very strong reporting to do. I have addressed Parliament twice on this matter in extensive statements. Whatever information that is there, it is disclosed. And opposition has played a very effective role in this regard. So there is no question of a cover-up or the government facing the public to answer questions. That is, I think, something that is very important for the development of our democracy, and which the public can say the government acted in a way that's accountable.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Holness said the probe into Petrojam has identified several weaknesses which the administration has started to address.
For example, we have seen weaknesses in the issuance of a particular kind of contract, retainer contracts. We have sought to address this with new policy guidelines. We have seen weaknesses in donation policies. We have sought to correct those in new policy guidelines. And as we go along, we will see more and we will make adjustments.
In the meantime, Chairman of the Spectrum Management Authority, SMA, Trevor Forrest, has resigned. In a letter addressed to the Prime Minister Andrew Holness, dated Tuesday, July 31, Mr. Forrest says his resignation is in the best interest of the impeccable record of the SMA, the government, and the people of Jamaica. He says he made his decision after giving careful consideration and having conversations with family and friends about the different perspectives and viewpoints surrounding actions attributed to him in the public domain in relation to the execution of his duties as chairman of the SMA. He says the board will take the necessary actions to nominate a new chairman and advise the Prime Minister accordingly. Mr. Forrest's resignation comes after it was alleged that he attempted to use his position as chairman of the SMA to have Carolyn Warren shortlisted as a candidate for manager of the SMA after the application period had passed. It also follows calls by the PMP for Mr. Forrest to resign, calling his actions an abuse of power. Mr. Forrest is the latest in a string of resignations from the Ministry of Energy, including the minister himself, Dr. Andrew Wheatley. Moving on now, having a physician on call has never been this easy. The MDlink is about to revolutionize how Jamaicans seek healthcare. Take a look. Your doctor on call whenever, wherever, just by a click of a mouse. It's the way patients will see doctors in the future, and the future is now. Dr. Shea Bowen's MDlink is giving Jamaicans the opportunity to access healthcare in a new way.
MDlink is an innovative online telemedicine platform and service. What it does is it allows patients to connect with doctors online via text, audio, or video chat. So you get a consultation online, and after that consultation, the doctor decides whether or not he wants to send an e-prescription, a lab request, or a radiology request even. It's electronically sent straight and directly to the pharmacy by a fax or email, and that's how patients get their prescriptions. So what it does, it reduces waiting times at the doctor's office and also at the pharmacy.
The web-based platform will allow patients to go online and book appointments to see a registered doctor.
It is available 24/7. You go online, you book an appointment within 15 minutes. So let's say there would be an appointment for 8:15, 8:30, 8:45, 9 o'clock. You take one of those appointments. A doctor receives your appointment request, looks at your patient file, accepts the appointment based on if they think it's something that can be managed over a telemedicine platform. Once that appointment is accepted, the patient receives a notification to say your appointment has been accepted and confirmed. And at that time, they both join an online secure medical chat room.
The appointments last 15 minutes and range from $1,000 to $2,000 Jamaican dollars. Dr. Bowen notes that the platform will help to take the burden off the public healthcare system.
Mostly with public hospitals, it would help with overcrowding, which is a big problem in Jamaica because healthcare is free. A patient who has a flu or a bruise or urine infection or migraine, they go into the emergency room and they take up valuable time, brain power, and resources. Those resources could be directed much better towards high-risk cases such as a heart attack, a stroke, gunshot wound, stab wound. And that in turn would help streamline hospitals to manage the more important cases.
While the platform brings convenience to patients, it will not be able to diagnose the more severe cases.
We treat common low-risk conditions that have been proven to work effectively and successfully in developed nations. So telemedicine is not new. What's important is that there are a lot of things that we do not treat, and that's for safety reasons. So chest pain, that's a no-no. Once you come onto the platform and you say you have chest pain, we're going to direct you right away to a hospital or a physical facility. Even things like lacerations, pediatric ear infections, brain trauma, loss of consciousness, head trauma, those are things that, loss of vision, those are things that we wouldn't try or attempt to manage over a telemedicine platform.
So what will MDlink treat?
Things we would manage include migraines, menstrual cramps, prescription refills, urine infections, maybe a rash, cellulitis, which is a skin infection. If you have an eye infection, that's something that you can take a picture of or diagnose over the video chat. I believe the most helpful thing would be prescription refills in terms of patients that know their blood pressure is controlled or their diabetes is controlled and they know they just need the doctor to refill the prescription for them.
With more and more concern about data security these days, how will MDlink secure people's medical data?
That is very important. It is one of the most important things that we took into consideration when developing the MDlink platform. MDlink, it was designed on using Amazon Web Services, which is a new infrastructure, and it allows the MDlink platform to be HIPAA compliant. That's Health Information Portability and Accountability Act compliant. And what that means is that any information put onto the MDlink platform is secure, it's very encrypted, and your information is safe. It is in keeping with the US and the other first world developed nations level of security.
While the platform has only been up and running a few days now, it is gaining the interest of local doctors who are willing to offer their services through the website. However, Dr. Bowen knows that a doctor will only be added after extensive checks and variations are done. Company news comes up next, then later, Apple hits $1 trillion mark. More WBR after this break. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. Here's this week's company news.
Grace Group's revenue went up by $2 billion for the first half of 2018, while the group's net profit went up by 12%. Despite the increase in revenue, the company's international food business experienced a decline in pre-tax profits compared to the corresponding period of 2017. This was due to the performance of Grace Foods UK Limited, which made significant investments during the period in the Nourishment and Aloe brands. These investments resulted in increased costs, but it is expected that this will lead to sustained brand value growth and a strong market share for these products. Mayberry Jamaican Equities has been listed on the main market of the Jamaica Stock Exchange. The IPO, which was fully subscribed, raised $908 million, which increased the JSE main market capitalization to $1.19 trillion and the overall market capitalization to $1.25 trillion. This also increased the total number of companies listed to 74 and the total number of securities to 107. Mayberry Jamaican Equities IPO, which deliberately targeted millennials to get them to invest, was also a special attempt by Mayberry to increase shareholder value.
Let's now take a look at the closing numbers from the major stock markets around the world. When we come back, more of the week's top stories from the BATV News Desk, so stay with us. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. More news now. It's not accurate to describe the Jamaican dollar as a sliding dollar, so says the governor of the Bank of Jamaica BOJ, Brian Winter. He's describing it instead as fluctuating. The BOJ boss says this trend shouldn't have any major impact on the economy, especially with the record low inflation of 2.8%. Jamila Maitland tells us more.
Since April, the value of the Jamaican dollar to the US has declined by some 6%. On July 26, the local currency hit a record low, selling for $134.49 to $1 US. But the head of the central bank says it's still too early to decisively say the Jamaican dollar is sliding.
Description of the dollar as a sliding dollar is not accurate. The dollar has been fluctuating. It has been going up, and it has been going down by as much as it's been going up. Multiple times over the last 6 months, multiple times over the last 12 months as well. And so I think in answering that question, we have to maybe more not talk about what is the impact of the sliding dollar, but more talk about what is the impact of a fluctuating dollar that goes up and down.
He says whilst the issue of the fluctuating dollar mustn't be overplayed, he also admits that it mustn't be underplayed either, as this is an economic challenge for the business community.
Okay, if the dollar's going to go up and down like this, a business can be seriously affected by having to buy their goods at the wrong point in that cycle. For example, at this point, you're buying it, it's quite expensive, but maybe in a few weeks you'll be able to buy it at a much lower price, okay? That difference can be quite expensive and damaging for a business.
Governor Winter has recommended that businesses hedge the current exchange rate to cushion themselves from the changes in the dollar.
In systems like this one that we have now, an ordinary business should be able to go to its bank and hedge that risk, that the amount they'll have to pay on a contract to get the dollars in, say, 2 or 3 weeks' time is higher than it is today. They should be able to lock in an exchange rate today on that purchase. They're called forward contracts. There are many different names people will use, but essentially these are normal, easy products for a business to be able to manage that exposure they have, that risk they have, that the exchange rate, in 2 or 3 weeks would have moved in the wrong direction from their point of view.
He adds that although a depreciating dollar may influence inflation, it is not likely now, given inflation at a record low for the country at just 2.8%.
Meanwhile, the National Consumers League, NCL, says that they're concerned about the depreciating Jamaican dollar. They say the average consumer is now feeling the impact, which could worsen in the coming months. The group raised the alarms at the National Financial Inclusion Council, NFIC's second annual general meeting in Kingston recently. Here again is Jamila Maitland.
President of the NCL, Trevor Samuels, is questioning whether the inflation statistics are accurate. The Statistical Institute of Jamaica, Statin, is reporting inflation of 2.8% for the period June 2017 to June 2018. However, Samuels says consumers are feeling the effect of a depreciating dollar.
Are we using the right basket nowadays to measure inflation? Because as a consumer, I am feeling it at the gas pumps, I am feeling it at the supermarket, and I'm feeling it every time I spend my money. Are we using the right measurement of inflation these days?
But BOJ's Governor Brian Winter says inflation is measured by Statin, which is ranked internationally. He says their methods are continuously calibrated.
The fact that your experience is not the same as the inflation is not a problem. It's not a problem with the basket. It's not a problem. It's a reflection that you are probably not consuming the average consumption that the inflation basket represents.
Governor Winter says the inflation index is a representation of the average Jamaican's consumption patterns.
It's very important that the inflation basket is reflective of what the average experience of Jamaicans is. And that's really important because you're trying to influence and maintain a stable price environment for most Jamaicans. But there will be Jamaicans who are affected somewhat differently, who will consume more, for example, gas, in that example perhaps, than a person taking a bus ride, and the share of the bus ride in their income. But I would also encourage you to think about, which is difficult for most people to do when you're thinking about price increases, is that we seldom think about the things where the price didn't move. And we certainly rarely think about the things where the price has fallen.
Nearly 15,000 more people were working this April than last April. The unemployment rate also remained fairly stable compared to January, and youth unemployment continues to decline. That's according to Statin's labor force figures for April 2018. Javon Keys has the breakdown.
The unemployment rate for April 2018 was recorded at 9.7%. That's an improvement over the 12.2% recorded for April last year. However, it's a minimal increase compared to the record low of 9.6% in January. Meanwhile, the employed labor force for April was 1.2 million persons. That's an increase of almost 15,000 persons over April 2017. Nearly twice as many women than men gained jobs during the period. The number of employed males went up by nearly 5,000, bringing the number of employed males to 647,000. Comparatively, the female labor force grew by nearly 10,000. The group elementary occupations grew the most compared to April last year. This group includes people like car washers, street vendors and housekeepers in hotels. Almost 175,000 persons were employed in the occupation group as of April, an increase of 13,200 persons. And the industry that grew the most was wholesale and retail, repair of motor vehicle and equipment, with 13,300 persons being employed. That's up by 5.8%. Youth unemployment, which accounts for persons aged 14 to 24 years, continues to trend downwards, coming in at 25.8% compared to 29% in April last year.
When we come back, Apple hits historic $1 trillion mark. More WBR after this break. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. Apple hit a significant milestone this week when it became the first publicly traded U.S. company to hit the $1 trillion in value mark.
A company of firsts. Apple became a household name in 1984 thanks to the Macintosh, the first mass-market computer.
The computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see
its user interface and stylish font made the Macintosh easy to navigate and friendly to look at. The Macintosh was also the first computer to introduce the mouse to a wider audience. In 2001, Apple also took music to the digital era with the iPod. MP3 players already existed, but what made the iPod stand out was its sleek design and how easy it was to use. Apple started by putting 10,000 songs in our pockets, as the slogan went, and ended up changing the way the entire music industry worked. iTunes allowed users to buy music digitally, soon followed by music videos, films, and even books. But Apple's defining breakthrough came in 2007. Steve Jobs, who was the CEO at the time, called it an iPod, a mobile phone, and an internet communications device rolled into one.
These are not three separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone.
The iPhone changed the way we communicate and replaced a whole host of things along the way: flashlights, planners, and cameras. Finally, Apple was the first to introduce apps that helped transform the iPhone even more, not to mention the iPad and Apple Watch that came later. After decades of focusing on user experience, the Cupertino tech company has now cemented its place in history as the first trillion-dollar giant.
And that's our show for this week. On behalf of the entire Weekend Business Report team, I'm Keneal. See you next time.